Hello, my friends, and welcome back to the Keeper of the Home podcast. I have kind of a unique episode for you today. I've gotten a little behind in life and wanted to think of a way that I could still get a podcast out for you this week. So what I am actually doing is I am sharing the first video that goes along with my 8-video segment that is inside my homeschool exploration class. You can find that class over at tidbitsandco.com or link directly from my blog website, which is tidbitsandcompany.com. Anyway, in this video, I am talking over our story on why we started homeschooling and kind of the transformation that is made in our family culture and in myself. So if you've ever been interested in homeschooling, if you are homeschooling, or if you're like on the fence trying to decide if this is something you want to do, I really think this video will be helpful for you as I kind of dive into maybe pros and cons and what this kind of lifestyle has offered us. So I hope you'll find it interesting, and feel free to always leave me comments over on my YouTube channel under this podcast video. And I just really hope you enjoy this. And if it piques your interest, please check out the full class where I will have a printable packet full of resources and of course the other videos. So thank you, and I hope you enjoy. My friend, I am so excited that you're here to join me for this homeschool exploration class. I've really kind of poured my heart and soul into this one. I want something that is so helpful for you. So I've thought about every little detail, and I really hope you enjoy it. I will just let you know some logistics here. So this class comes with the 8 videos that you got the links for when you purchased the class. And those 8 videos are kind of covering more specific topics on homeschooling. This video here, we're just going to dive into kind of my story and the transformation that's taken place in our family and kind of in our family culture since that we made that decision. But then you'll be able to follow through with the rest of the videos and get more detailed and dive deeper into each topic. I have tried to make these classes really easy to access and consume. So that's why I've chosen the YouTube platform. These are private videos that you get the link to. My request for you is that you please don't just share these with anyone. I have put a lot of work and effort into these classes, so I would appreciate your respect for my time. However, if you feel like someone would benefit from these classes, or this class in particular, please link them out to it where you bought it over on my tidbitsandco.com shop page where I list all my classes. If you could send them there and have them purchased there, I would be very grateful to you. Also important to know is that the best place for you and I to talk about this further would actually be just right in the YouTube comments section of this video and any of the further videos. If you have questions about anything I said, or comments or experience that you want to share with the community of people taking this class with you, I think that really is the best place for us to talk and bring these things up. So drop them right in the comments on this video. Since it's private, only the people in the class will see them. So I hope that's a great place for us to communicate and dive a little deeper. I hope you've been able to print out the printable packet that went along with the class. I've really worked hard to make this very resourceful for you. And each one I will talk about if it correlates with one of these videos. So like there's the reading book lists or the questionnaires for your kids, for example. And I will reference these when they're related to each video to kind of give you some direction. But go ahead and look at that packet. There's actually several note pages for you, so you can print that out, put it in a binder, bind it at the print shop, whatever you want to do to compile that. Then you can go to the note pages and take notes as you're taking this class with these 8 videos. So I hope that is very helpful. The other thing that came with this class is the resource page. And I decided to make this resource page just an open page on my blog because I will likely add to it as I discover more resources. So I didn't want to just type these out and put them in a printable because I know this resource page is actually going to grow. And As I learn more, I will share more with you. So definitely check out that link and maybe bookmark that page so that you can come back to it and discover more resources that I am also discovering. I also always feel like I need to kind of add a disclaimer here that if you happen to hear doors shutting, kid chatter, or see them riding their bikes behind me in this window, that's just how I roll, and hope you can appreciate it with me. You can always watch these videos on YouTube, throw it up on a computer, your phone, your TV, or just let it run and listen to it. There may be some situations where I insert some visuals, but for the most part, it's me talking, and you'll be able to get most of the information that way by just listening. So you do what works for you as you go about your day, but hopefully it's very easily accessible for you. All right, let's get going. Now, I wanted to mention, when I really felt inspired to create this class, I was trying to visualize who might actually take it and be here with me. And I'm imagining that you are someone who is either like on the fence about homeschooling. Maybe you've had the promptings or the interest or the desire, but you need to learn a little bit more before you like jump full feet in. So you might be there. You might have already jumped well over the fence and you've decided to do this. You want some resources, you want some guidance. I'm here for that. Or maybe you're just simply curious. Maybe you're seeing a trend in homeschooling and you want to just understand what's going on and if you're missing something. Anyway, I'm assuming you're here for those reasons. It's even possible that you're a few years into homeschool and just love to learn and experience what other people are doing and get more resources. So that's what I'm imagining who is taking this. And in my instance, I feel like I may be a few years ahead of you in any of these scenarios. I'm not like super experienced. I haven't done this for 10 years. I believe we're going into our 4th year of homeschool. And I just feel like I have a little bit of a leg up or some experience to share with you. But at the same time, I'm new enough at doing this that I remember those feelings, that nervousness of jumping into this world and feeling maybe a little inadequate or nervous. So those feelings are still really raw and fresh on my mind. And so I'm hoping that I can meet you here in this area of a little experienced, but fully aware of the emotions that you may be feeling. So as I share kind of my story and my experience in homeschooling with you in this video, I want to share with you so that you can maybe understand my perspective or the context for all the things that I'm sharing. I feel like it will help you relate to maybe your journey or maybe see the differences so that you can, make the decisions that you need to make. But I really feel like my experience and my story, what's led me here, could be valuable for you and could give you some very actionable takeaways for all the decisions that you have to make moving forward in homeschool. And I also just really want to be very raw and real here with you. Sometimes when you put things out there on the internet, you have to be careful about what you say. But since this is a class and you've opted in and maybe we're a little like-minded, I really don't want to hold back much. And some of my views may appear to some as maybe not politically correct, a little offensive or old-fashioned or sexist. Some of the things I might say could fall into those categories, but I really don't want to hold back with you on my feelings and experience, and I just want to be really raw here, and I hope you appreciate that. And I know that we may have differing opinions because of our life experiences and perspectives, and I very much welcome any feedback and thoughts that you have in the comments. So please chat with me and let me know at any time if you have something to share. Now, I also am going to share my story, and you will hear me refer to like promptings from the Spirit or how God has led our journey. I am a Christian woman, and this has very much been a journey with Him. And I never would have made this decision had I not felt that He was guiding me. So I just can't leave that out as I'm sharing my story. And no matter what you believe, an intuition or a higher power, I feel like you can maybe still relate and glean what you need to from my experience. Okay, I want to share with you some of the mindset or beliefs that I had before I jumped in on the homeschool train. And I very much feel like you might relate to these. I don't feel like these are things that only I have experienced. There were a lot of like nevers in my mindset before I started homeschooling, because I sent my oldest kids to Olive Elementary School, pulled the oldest one out when she was in middle school, but I'll get into that. But so I had very much experienced the public school life, and I had my own perceptions of what homeschool was. And this is what I told myself. I told myself I could never homeschool, like never. I just knew that was not my journey. In fact, when I heard other moms or women say that, I'm like, oh yeah, same here. I could never. It's all just almost humorous to look back on. I believed that if I tried to teach my kids, all we would do was fight. I just said they would never learn from me. We could never get along. If I told them they had to do homework or learn this, it would just be a fight. It could never work. They wouldn't even enjoy it, and I wouldn't enjoy it, and we'd just fight all the time. That is what I truly believed. I believed that my kids would never want to homeschool. And the thing is, I believe that because we had amazing public school experiences. Our experience in public school was probably like the best possible. They loved school. They are very social children, right? And they were always like top of the charts. So in my mind, like my kids love school. They're thriving. I could never do this to them. They wouldn't want it. The other belief I had was centered around my own identity. And I always told myself, I am an entrepreneur. Well, not always. This became kind of my identity in motherhood as I was searching for something else to fulfill me. I told myself, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm not a homeschool mom. I'm not a teacher. I thrive on business and growing business. This is just my identity, and I can't suppress that. And nothing could fulfill me as much as being a businesswoman does. That is really the thoughts that I had, that I felt I would find the most fulfillment in. The other thing I really looked forward to was all my kids going to school full time. I actually never reached that point, but I would just tell myself over and over, I cannot wait until they're all in school. I looked forward to that day. I was not going to be the mom who cried as her last kid went to school full time. I was going to celebrate. It was going to be a joyous day. I was so excited for that day. And that is what I looked forward to, so I could work more and I could just have more me time. I really looked forward to that stage of life. I imagined that having my kids in school full time was like the ultimate mom freedom. And I just felt like I was trucking along till I could reach that point, and then everything would be okay. Then I could enjoy my kids when they were home and send them away, and it would be the perfect balance. I just believed that we would all get along better if we weren't around each other all day. That just made sense in my mind. I also felt very unqualified to teach my kids. Like, especially when I heard about homeschool moms who taught their like middle schoolers or high schoolers. I thought, there's no way. We are not certified to do this. Even though I got my degree in secondary education, I felt completely unqualified for being my kids' teacher and teaching them enough to like get them to college or get them past that point that I felt they needed to be. So these were all the beliefs that I told myself. I also had a lot of preconceived notions about homeschoolers, and I bet these are familiar to you too. There was the preconceived notion that homeschoolers are weird, right? They are the weird ones. We can all think of that homeschool family growing up who were just a little different, and that was the perception. I believe that homeschool kids just don't know how to be social, that they were socially awkward, and that their parents were doing them a disservice for taking them out of such a social environment that is public school, and that they would just always be a little socially awkward. I believe that homeschool kids just could not learn enough, that there was no way their parents could teach them everything they needed to learn to be successful in life. And I believe that homeschool was not ever a better solution from public school. I believe that if I ever homeschooled, or anyone else who homeschooled, that the kids would eventually really struggle out in the real world, that it was like a fish out of water dumping into a pond of sharks and they would get eaten alive. I really truly believe that. I also, when I met other homeschool mothers, I thought that they just must be superwomen. They must have powers that I do not have, because clearly it would be impossible to do it all and to homeschool your children. So I believe that a homeschool mom or parent had to like reach some certain bar of performance that I was completely incapable of. So I'm curious, do you relate to any of this? Any of these preconceived notions? Any of these limiting beliefs? I would love to hear if you've also been there, and if this sparked something in you. Now, these feelings were very real and raw for me. All of them. I believed all of them with my whole heart. And so, again, it's almost unbelievable that I am here making a homeschool class, preaching something completely different from all of these beliefs. So hang in with me, because it's been a ride. And I have to say that every single one of these preconceived notions that I had has been blown to shreds, just completely blown to shreds. And as I read all these to you, I don't believe any of them anymore. Completely gone out of my mind, and the reversal of all these could not be more true for me. So it's just amazing to experience something that in your life, that you can change your thought processes and what you believe so drastically. It's just crazy that is possible, but that has definitely been my experience. So I want to share with you my experience and what has led me here in this place that I am now, like the biggest proponent for homeschooling that you'll possibly ever meet. So I want to take you with me and kind of backtrack to tell you my story and how it all came to be. So I started homeschooling in 2020, and we all know that year very well. It was the year of COVID, and a lot changed. And we can look at that and say, oh, it must have been maybe the masks or the whole uneasiness of the situation that we were presented during that year. But honestly, I feel like the Lord was preparing me years before this. And now I can look back and really truly see that. But it's almost like COVID and that whole situation for me was really the straw that broke the camel's back. And I know I'm not alone there. I know homeschooling just skyrocketed that year. A lot of kids went back after that, but a lot of families chose to keep their kids home. And that is definitely where I fall into. But I find it so interesting, even the families that have chosen to homeschool before COVID or before me or since after, when I hear their story, I still find really similar threads to it. And I mean, they're all unique, but yet strangely similar. It's almost this like call to homeschool, if you will, that is making a movement in the world. And it's super interesting when I hear of other people, or people come to me to ask me about homeschooling and they say, well, I've been feeling this way, or I've been wondering about this. We're all kind of walking a very similar journey. So I hope that in sharing mine, maybe you'll be able to see those threads and it will help you in your decisions. I know some people have actually kind of been forced into the homeschooling situation. Maybe their kids had special needs that just could not be met in the public schools, or, maybe there's bullying situations that they've got to deal with, or maybe the kid's just not thriving at school. Just regardless of the situation, I still feel like there's this really gentle opening of our hearts, this process that we all have to go through in order to kind of jump off the conventional path. It's scary, it's different, and sometimes you feel alone, but I feel like we're all prepared and we're all taken on a journey where we can be ready for this kind of change in our lives. But typically what I see when people tell me their story is it kind of starts with these promptings, or like a curiosity of like, what's going on? What am I missing? Could this be my path? That's really interesting. And then a lot of times we find that like people and circumstances and the things we listen to or read, like homeschool just keeps popping up in our lives. And sometimes I wonder if that's a bit of like a self-fulfilling prophecy, like you're going to do it, and so you see those things, or what they call it, like confirmation bias. Like you are confirmed in your life with the things that you're thinking about. Like, for example, if I noticed when we bought this bluish silver van, I'd never seen it before. I was so excited to find that blue color, but then as soon as we bought it, that van was everywhere. That wasn't really situational, but it's just kind of the confirmation bias that I had. It was something that I now noticed. So that may be part of it, but I really find it interesting that once someone is on this journey, the opportunities to hear about homeschooling from others or online just seem to expand and enter into our lives. Now, my journey started really unbeknownst to me. I still had like really little kids. Probably the youngest was still in diapers, and I just happened upon a website called The Good and the Beautiful. Maybe you've heard of it. They're a homeschool curriculum product creators that just have really uplifting and wholesome resources for us. Anyway, I happened upon this when they were still actually pretty new company, but I saw what they had. They had like these curriculums on like different science topics, like mammals or chemistry or botany. Like I saw what resources they had, or like some awesome history curriculums and stories and books. And I got really interested about this idea that maybe I could have fun during the summers of entertaining my children and keeping their minds alive by kind of working through some of these curriculums with them. And so I bought a few and actually did like the preschool curriculum with my youngest, and it was a lot of fun. And I felt like my kids really enjoyed having me teach them and be a part of their learning. And it created a really interesting environment in our home. Whereas before, I'd really just been trying to keep my kids busy and entertained. So this became kind of this like environment that fostered learning and discovery. And I really enjoyed it. But the thought to do that full time outside of summers just never crossed my mind. Like, was not going to happen. But I look back now and I can see like the threads of interest were planted then when I discovered these resources. So then I'm going to kind of fast forward you into some of the other things that expanded my mind and the possibility of homeschooling. First of all, my oldest was entering 7th grade. My daughter Ray is like this absolute free spirit. She just has this love of life, this childish curiosity that even as she got older just wouldn't fade. And I just admired that about her, and I adored it about her. But when she went into 7th grade, I saw that spirit just be crushed by the pressure the scholastic pressure and the social pressure. And I was just so sad because I thought she would have held on to that. I thought that's just who she was, but that free spirit was just absolutely crushed. And I felt like I was losing her. And I just remember mourning that and just wishing that she could just stay that way forever. There were also other instances. I'm going to bring up some of the bad things here, but there were plenty of good things that happened in our public school years. But there were these things that upset me. One time, my Shay, I think she was like, I don't know, kindergarten or first grade, she really had to go to the bathroom. And of course, the teachers tell them, no, you have to wait. Well, what happens? They have an accident, and I get the call, and I was just so upset. I'm like, they're in this environment where they can't even go to the bathroom when they need to. Like, these things really frustrated me. I also felt that our mornings were beyond stressful. Trying to get these kids out to a middle school schedule, then an elementary school schedule, and also trying to take care of myself and feed them and pack lunches. Like, mornings were so stressful, and I found that we were just fighting through most of them. I would send them off to school, usually grumpy and sad, and I just hated that. I really came to despise mornings. And then after, when they would come home from school, from 6-7 hours of school, my kids would be exhausted. They would just fall apart. They were just, you could just tell that the day had absolutely drained them. In another instance, it was like a parents come to lunch week. And I remember sitting by my daughter Kate and her friends. She was probably 5th grade, somewhere around there. And I was sitting there at lunch with her, and I was just exhausted watching her try to be someone that she felt other people would like. It was like this social pressure had created a totally different personality in her. And I remember thinking, is this who you're trying to be all day? Because this is not Kate. And she was the one that would usually completely fall apart after school. And I just thought, no wonder she's exhausted. She is trying to keep up this persona of who she feels she needs to be at school, and it's wearing her out because it's not who she is. And that made me sad. Another one of my kiddos had a teacher, bless her heart. I know she was going through some hard times, a young new teacher, but she was terribly strict, and my daughter was terrified of her. She didn't dare ask her for help. She was terrified to fail. She would come home with these anxieties about learning, and there was nothing I could do. I actually tried to get her to move classes, but they wouldn't let her. Like, I just felt like my kids were stuck in this environment that I had no control of, that I really couldn't help them with. And all these things were making me really sad. Now, of course, there were a lot of good things. My kids had fun. They loved recess. They loved their friends. And my kids, not to brag on them, but they were always off the charts smart. Like, some of them were in the after-school programs for like advanced kids. Like, they were never behind. They were learning. They were excelling in the world standards. Of course, made me a proud mama, but they loved school. They were showing all the progress that they needed. They loved their friends. And in truth, I enjoyed having that peace at home. Now, I had one kiddo that would go to preschool a couple of hours a day, so that was really my only alone time. But I really enjoyed just sending them out the door and having them come home and telling me how their day went. So there were the good things and the bad things, but I still felt like something was really off. But I just kept going, because that's how things are done. You send your kids to school. And I just still believed that even if I wanted to do this for my kids, I had so much on my plate that even if the desire was there to do something like homeschool, I just believed there was absolutely no way to fit this into my life. None whatsoever. So I just couldn't consider it. So I had an event happen that really turned the table for me. And that was a blog retreat, oddly enough. And a few friends of mine that do the blogging world with me decided year 2020, since all the conferences were shut down, we were just going to meet up in the state of Washington, where one of my friends lived. And I was really looking forward to that, of course. I love those kind of breaks. They kind of feed my entrepreneurial spirit and are really fun to talk to these other women who are doing what I do. Well, these other women that I went with, 2 of them homeschooled and 2 of us did not. But as I listened to my friends talk about their lifestyle, I was just amazed. I'm like, wait a minute. So you pretty much have everything on your plate that I'm trying to balance, and yet you fit this into your life. How is this possible? But I loved listening to them and what they were sharing with me, because they shared not only was it possible, but how amazing their experiences had been, how amazing their kids were turning out, these experiences they were having. And I began to really desire that. And I came away from that blog retreat with more than a curiosity, more than a desire. It was almost like, okay, I know at some point I'm going to do this. I just don't know when, and I don't think I'm ready. But as things go, as you start to step over that line in the sand, if you will, then it all opens up, and I began to notice more influencers or people in my life I would run into that homeschooled, and they would talk about it with me. Like, it just became more than a prompting and more of a not so subtle hint from heaven, if you will, that this is my path, and I needed to prepare myself. And even after all that, still I had a lot of hesitations, a lot of those limiting beliefs that I shared with you. So what I did, I look back and just shake my head at my stubbornness. So it was, of course, the year of COVID. They were going back to school that fall after they had been out or sent home that spring. And then we had summer. That spring, of course, the teachers tried to do online schooling, which was a nightmare. And that's when I kind of decided, I could never do this. But anyway, so that fall came, and I just decided homeschool is probably in my future, but I'm not ready. I tried to kind of appease these promptings by looking for other options. What I ended up doing was I sent my kids to a charter school, which was half an hour away. I felt like maybe they were doing things a little bit better, because I would get these emails from like staff and listen to them talk about how they were going to run school with COVID and the mask. And I just thought, this just does not sound like an ideal learning situation. This sounds really stressful for children. So I was looking at other options. So I sent them to this charter school, and what ended up happening as they got started was the kids would go in for a couple days a week at the school. Now, mind you, going to this charter school was a half an hour away, so that is already 2 hours of my day that I was choosing to spend in the car, transporting them there and back twice. But for some reason, that still sounded better than jumping into homeschool. I don't know. But then they started to say, like, we're going to make the class sizes smaller, so half the class is going to do online learning a couple times a week and then come in for class the rest of the week. So it ended up being much like that spring where they were just on the computer all the time, all the tech problems. My kids weren't learning. They were hating it. I was hating it. I was spending hours trying to figure this out with them. It was miserable. So I'm like, no, this is not a better solution. So I ended up begging and pleading our local public school teachers to allow me to send the kids to school after all. Filled out all the paperwork, switched my kids to school again, sent them to public school. I think I lasted 4 days before it's just like, come on, Cammie, you know what you're supposed to do. It's time to pull the plug. You're not happy. Your kids are not happy. That was really hard for them to sit in a mask for hours a day. I don't know if you experience this with your kids. My kids become very lethargic, and they'd get home. I just remember my daughter just walking through the door, flopping on the floor. I just don't think they were getting enough oxygen. I'm not judging any situation. I know everyone did the best they could, but it was rough, and my kids were not adapted to that lifestyle. Anyway, I sent them for like 4 days and like, I'm done, but I needed about a week more to gather all the curriculum. At least I felt I needed. Looking back, I should have just never had sent them anywhere. But I think I needed to go through that just to be sure of my feelings and to be sure what I needed to do, because I was 100% sure after all of that. Another thing that like really upset me during those 2 weeks I was sending them, my daughter went to middle school and she came home and she proceeded to tell me how in her history class, her teacher had just told them what a terrible, terrible person Christopher Columbus was. Now, I know there's a lot of controversy in this, but I was really upset that this teacher had chosen to focus on all the negative, not bring out any of the positive, not talk about the times and how they might be different or how facts can be skewed. Like, it was just one-sided. Christopher Columbus was terrible. Why are we celebrating a day for him? And I was shocked that that happened in our little valley. And so I began to feel like kind of upset that I had no control over what my children were being taught. And it really opened my eyes. So my journey went from like being so furious that I was getting these promptings, like really angry at God. It was almost like a practical joke because I had finally reached that point. My youngest was going to first grade, which is full-time school for us. Finally reached that point, and then I'd had the promptings to take them out. So I went through these emotions of being really furious, to then curious, like, oh, I wonder what this lifestyle is like. And maybe that's where you're at right now. To like complete acceptance that this was my path, like 100% surety. And then after I passed through those little 3 emotions, there came this like absolute excitement and possibility for the road ahead. I was just on fire. I had completely changed my mindset and was ready to dive in all the way. So that is where I was when I started my first year of homeschooling. And I have to tell you, that year up to that point was probably the best year of motherhood I had ever had. Now, of course, my kids were a little hesitant, like, what about my friends? They'll all forget me. There was a lot of emotions. They didn't all accept it just, without their own worries and fears, which are totally validated. But what allowed them to accept it was my enthusiasm. I had to get to that point of just feeling so excited for this adventure and trusting in the Lord for them to just feed off of that excitement. And we would all get excited when the new supplies from our curriculum that I'd bought would come. And we get excited thinking about like, oh, maybe we can travel more, do more adventures, or wow, you don't have to wake up so early anymore. You can actually sleep in, and we can shift around our morning routines so they're not so stressful. Like, my enthusiasm really fed them and helped them to meet me where I was and get us going forward. Now, I would say I wish I would have maybe given myself a little more grace during that time. And I even know a lot of homeschool families or people that have homeschooled for a long time actually recommend taking like a 6-month break from education and just learning how to be together all the time again, permanently. Like, what does that look like? How does that change our family culture? But I was actually really ready to get into the curriculum. I knew I'd already loved the good and the beautiful and was really excited to dive into that and see how we all did when we were going to learn from home. But I do wish I would have given myself a little more patience and grace to allow myself to figure that out. But anyway, that's in hindsight. We will dive more into that. But I will say, like, the biggest change was the mornings. The mornings felt so much better. We were able to just slow down. maybe read a book together, enjoy more of a nourishing breakfast instead of these like little quick bowls of cereals or whatever. Like our mornings were like the biggest, most drastic change for us. And it felt so good. It just like set the day. Everything was better after that morning. And I was just amazed how that one change of not having to be somewhere in someone else's timeline made such a difference in how we all treated each other the rest of the day. Now, because we did this during COVID, there were some actually added benefits, which I thought at first would not be beneficial for us. But, you know, when things shut down, like there was no more gymnastic lessons, and a lot of the activities that my kids would have done were just not happening that year. And it forced us to slow down. And so I'm really grateful that we jumped in during that year, because it really allowed us to figure out how to entertain ourselves, how to live our own life, and what to do in our spare time together. It really shaped basically the rest of our homeschool experience. So I'm really grateful for that time. Sometimes almost wish it back that things would just shut down and let us just be a family. But of course the impacts weren't all worth it. But that was an added benefit for us to do it at that time. But I think the biggest change was the joy in our family, both in myself and my kids. It was tangible. It was so drastic to see how much happiness we had in our family. In fact, my husband would come home from work. He was still had a 9-to-5 job at that point. He would come home and just comment like, everyone is so happy. And I felt that to my core. It was glorious. My children recognized it, and we just felt a joy that we had never felt before. It was just the best. And what I feel really contributed to that joy was a lot of things, but there is this joy that comes from children when they have the freedom to learn what they want to learn without this like pressure to measure up, you know. Even though my kids were on the top of the charts, off the charts for their grade level, relieving them of that pressure to be standardized just set them free. And it opened up this love of learning that I never knew was possible in children. I sat dumbfounded most days just seeing that if I just like enliven their curiosity just a little bit, I did not have to do much. Then they would take it on their own and they would research things, or they would go out in nature and like get really curious. Whereas before, learning was just, you know, read for 20 minutes, do your homework, show up to school. Their love of learning became alive. And I think above all things, I am most grateful for that. And that is like my new goal. I don't want to get my kids at some certain standardized level. I want them to love learning and to know how to learn. That is really such a mentality shift from what the world is teaching us, what our kids need for success. And I also experienced a level of freedom that I didn't know was possible. You know, the freedom from that homework battle. So your kids are exhausted from school all day, then they come home and have homework. They don't want to, they're tired, you're tired, it's dinner time. Like that whole mess was gone out of our lives. And it was so beautiful to not have that. There was this relief from driving them around everywhere. You know, I had kids in different schools based on their ages. They need to be dropped off and picked up at different times, or they'd have after school activities. Like so much of that went away that I found like, oh, I don't have to spend my day in the car anymore. How wonderful. There was no pressure to like pack lunches and get those ready or worry about what they were eating at school. All that worry went away. We just enjoyed lunch at home with whatever we wanted to eat and make. And of course I have 3 teenage girls now, but you know, girls in nature, sometimes the social drama was really intense. And as my kids got older, like 5th, 6th, 7th grade, that social drama would drain them and it would drain me, and you could tell it was impacting them. And then I would have to try to help them through that. Like, not having so much of that is wonderful. And then, of course, I've already talked about the stressful mornings. That really made a difference in me. I could just let my kids sleep. They actually got the sleep that they needed. I'm always amazed. Like, if you get your kids to bed at like 9 or 10 on school nights, especially the older they get, they have to get up early. That is actually not enough sleep for these growing bodies. So it was so beautiful to let my kids sleep till 7 or 8 if they needed that. And then I had these mornings to take care of myself, to exercise, read my scriptures, get outside for a little bit. Like, mornings just were better all around. So I feel like my mentality before of homeschool was, if I did this, I won't have the freedom that sending my kids to school brings. But what I've noticed and what I preach from the rooftops now is, it is an entirely different kind of freedom. Sure, your kids are home all day, every day, but you're free to do as you please. And I'm telling you, that is so liberating and so wonderful. I could never go back. It is so wonderful. You're trading one freedom for a different kind. And for us, this is the more liberating place to be. Another amazing thing that happened, I talked to you about my older daughter, Ray, how she had that free spirit, and middle school kind of sucked it out of her. It did not take long for me to get her back. And oh, it was just so wonderful to me. I just felt like, oh, she's there again, relieving her from that social pressure and the pressures of the world to achieve a certain level. It just brought her back. And even now she's a junior in high school, she still has that free spirit, that curiosity, that wonderment of the world. And I am so glad that I chose to choose the jump, if for that reason alone. I just feel that it has preserved my children and their innocence and their goodness in a way that could not have been done otherwise. Something else that was really unexpected for me was, I learned that I actually love to learn too. It's just crazy. You know, I was always like 4.0 student, high achiever, but I really didn't love school. I loved being around my friends, but I couldn't say I loved history. I hated science, hated math, but what happened when I created this, or cultivated this environment of learning for my kids, in turn, it did the same for me. And I found out that I love history. I love learning about prominent historical figures. I love teaching my kids about that. I love notebooking about them. I love discovering plants. Like, I know that I've had these hobbies and stuff, but I never considered them like learning. You know, I love to learn what I love to learn, but I didn't imagine that I could love like learning about the world, learning about science. I had told myself that's just not who I am. But when you are allowed to learn in an environment that has no pressure, no agenda, you will come alive no matter your age. And that has been pivotal for me to learn that I am not here as a homeschool mom to teach my kids everything in 18 years. Learning is a lifelong process, and I'm here for that. I buy books just for me, books that I never would imagine I'd pick up, like books on Lafayette or the French Wars or the American Revolution. Like, I want to learn them. That's mind-blowing to me. That is not who I've been. But this environment of learning has created that in myself, and that is amazing. And I'm now just preparing my kids to love learning. And then I know that they have a lifetime ahead of them where they can do the same for themselves, for their families. But it's not all ending at 18 years of age or when they graduate, that it's just beginning. And there's so much time to learn and grow. And really, if I'm being honest with myself, this whole experience has made me a new creature. I almost feel like the transformation has been more in myself than my children. Although it has been incredibly impactful for my children, I'm just amazed at what this journey has done for me as the mother of these children, guiding them on their educational journey. It has really transformed me into something that I didn't think was possible. And I no longer like take this pride in this identity of I am an entrepreneur. Now I do enjoy business. I love creating content for you guys and showing up here for you, but it's not the most important thing. And if it went away, I would be okay with that, because my identity is now more focused on being a mother, a homemaker, the keeper of my home, a wife, because I've learned that nothing that I could do in this world could fill me with more joy than showing up for my kids with my best self and fulfilling really that nurturing need that is inside of me that I felt that I had tried to suppress for so long. So I'm just so grateful for this journey. And I also feel like when you free your kids from the pressures of the world, they are allowed to discover themselves, especially those middle school ages. I know a lot of homeschool families actually send their kids back to school during middle school or high school. I feel those years, as I watch my kids, are so important for your kids to discover who they are, their interests, their personality, what they can contribute to this world. And when they're immersed in so much social pressure, it's really hard for them to stay true to themselves. And as I watch like other young women or young men and kind of compare them to my children, not in a bad way, but in a curious way, I see that my kids are so much more confident in who they are. And then I see the other kids just still trying so hard to fit in, and it almost breaks my heart because that's exhausting. We all know that when trying to be someone you're not or getting lost in your identity, it's really hard. And so when you allow your kids this space, they can really find themselves a lot easier. And I feel like the middle school years have been a walk in the park compared to how they were going, because there's just not that outside pressure that we're dealing with. I do want to talk a little bit about some of the challenges that we faced, and I will definitely get into this more and talk to you about how to overcome these. But in general, as you're starting to think about this journey or in it, if you feel like, well, when parents bring their kids home from school for the summer, you hear it a lot. Parents are like, oh my heavens, my kids are so bored. They need me all the time. They're eating me out of house and home. Like, summers are a real challenge for some parents to have their kids home all the time, because the kids go to school and they're told what to do, what to think, where to be, and just all their day is governed for them. And now all of a sudden it's not. That homeschool actually hardly takes any time in the day in reality, and we'll talk more about that. But I often tell people that there's honestly like this detox period, and that 2.5, 3 months of summer vacation is not enough to help your kids learn how to entertain themselves and to just be without being told what to do. You actually need a little bit longer. And I noticed that. So I had gone through the summer with my kids, like I mentioned, and then I decided to homeschool that fall. Now that summer was actually really challenging because I actually put them in front of the TV way too much, which impacted their behavior, of course. But when I had decided to homeschool, I knew that had to change. And I made a very firm decision for my family that there would be no TV during the week. If there was TV, it was something like watching Little House on the Prairie together on the evenings, or we like to have Magnolia Monday, where we watch the shows that Chip and Joanna put out together. But like, TV was not going to be this like just brain-numbing separation event, that if we did it, it would be together and on the weekends only when my husband and I went out for dates. And that changed everything, because my kids learned how to entertain themselves. They had to. And it took 3, 4, 5 months. And I'm telling you now, I do not have to entertain them. They are never bored. When you cultivate this environment of learning and just give them a few little things to get that started, kids know what to do, but we're not allowing them that time by sending them to school for 6 or 7 hours a day. And that's why they don't know what to do. And that's why summers are hard. So as you approach this, just know that there will be a detox period, and you have to evaluate video games, screen time, anything like that, and evaluate how that's affecting their behavior and their ability to learn to entertain themselves. That was a huge challenge I had to overcome. And now it's a breeze. It's a walk in the park. My kids know what to do with their time, and they're productive. They're inventive, and it is so fun to watch. But as I jumped in and being an entrepreneur and having an online business, one of the challenges was very real for me, and I'm not going to ignore this or not bring it up for you, is that it wasn't necessarily a time management problem, because in reality, homeschool does not take that much time. Once you take away running them to activities and to school and homework, really, you could package that all up into school time. Like, it was not a time management thing for me, but I quickly learned it was a brain space issue for me. When I put so much time in like helping my kids through their math and language arts, I did not have much more brain space with my workload to be the creative, enthusiastic homeschool mom I wanted to be. So it was a little through my journey, I decided to actually hire on some help and have like a college girl that was going into education come in for like an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours a day, and help my kids get through like the book work of homeschool. And what that did was like allowed me 2 hours to like solely focus on my work. And then I could put all that aside. And that's when I just really thoroughly enjoyed like teaching them history, teaching them how to sew, getting in the kitchen with them and cooking or going on adventures. Like I feel like I needed that extra brain space. Now, if you don't have to work and you feel like you have the brain space for all of that, you may not need help. But for me, I needed to pull in some help. And I actually got funding for that. And we will talk about funding and resources later on. So that is an option. So I never actually had to pay for this tutor fully out of pocket, that there was help. But anyway, you can get help and you can work through these challenges. Another challenge that I quickly learned I had to overcome was that helping them find friends was actually going to be on my shoulders. Now, they've kept some of their friendships, actually some of them very closely, from friends that they've made in public school and still go to public school. But I knew that if I was going to find them friends that were doing the same thing we were doing, it would take some effort from me. And I was nervous about that. But as soon as I began to realize what resources are out there, it became easy and it became abundant. And now we have like the best friendships, homeschool friendships for me and for my kids. And there will be a whole video. In fact, I believe it's the next one I'm filming about social, because it is such a concern. But that was a challenge that I had to overcome. And when I did, I realized that it was glorious on the other side. Okay, friends, I've pretty much given you my whole experience and story in a nutshell. There's so much more I could talk about and would love to talk about, but I'm getting a little chatty. But I just want to go over what I hope to do for you throughout the duration of this class and these videos that I'm sharing with you. I really hope to give you some clarity for your road ahead. I feel like when I was able to glean knowledge and experience from other homeschool parents, it really helped me make the decisions I needed to make and figure out how this was going to look for us. Because the thing about homeschool is there's not just one path, one road. You have so many options. And so it really helps to hear from other people so that you can figure out what you need to do for your family. So I hope to give you some clarity. I hope to show up here and encourage you. I am a really big homeschool proponent now. obviously. And so if you're here just needing to feel that enthusiasm and that encouragement, I'm going to do my very best to give that to you. And please reach out to me if you're feeling stuck or unsure of anything. I would love to help you through that. And then I also want to equip you with a lot of tools that I have discovered through our 3-4 years of homeschooling already. There are so many resources out there. You do not have to walk this road alone. And I want to help you dive into the resources without the overwhelm so that you can just snack on little pieces a little bit at a time and figure out how this is going to work for you. Now, whatever your reason for considering homeschool, if that's what you're doing, whatever your final straw is, like for us, which was COVID, I just want to encourage you that you'll never regret this decision, even if it doesn't work out, even if you have to send your kids back to school later on. I really feel like you will never regret trying. I know if I would not have tried, if I would have just kept pushing those promptings aside and looked for different options, I know I would have regretted it, not knowing if this would have worked for us. And I didn't really go into it feeling like this was our forever path, but after a year, I knew, like, no way was I ever sending them back. So just have faith that even if this isn't your forever journey, whatever you do now, even if it's after school stuff only, you won't regret it. You won't regret being more present for your family and helping them learn. You just won't regret it. And I do want to say, I'm here being very enthusiastic about this, but even if you take this whole class and walk away feeling like, no, this isn't for me, my friend, I want you to leave the mama guilt, okay? I do fully appreciate that this path is not for everyone. But for those who choose to be on it or who are wondering, I really want to show up to help you through that process. So if you decide to not walk the same path as I have, please leave that guilt behind and know that there is probably a reason for you to look into it anyway. Maybe something will happen in your future that will actually have you needing to reapproach this. Maybe you'll meet someone, a homeschool family that needs your understanding and appreciation. Maybe the timing isn't yet. Maybe you just needed to be more open-minded with what's going on in the world, so that you could be more active in their schooling or more interested in their learning. Like, even if you don't choose this path, please know that what you're going to learn here will not hurt you. It will benefit you. It'll help you in your mindset. And you just learning about anything is always a great thing. So just leave the guilt behind and walk here with me. I want to clarify that all the content that I've put in this class has actually been shaped by the questions that I get from others, whether that's people online that ask me about homeschool or people in my real life. I actually really recently, and this was kind of the push, it's like, okay, I need to make this class. But I had a friend that I used to work with in the grocery store in high school. She still lives in my area. She'd send me a text and said, can I just come up and talk to you about homeschooling? And I was shocked. You know, I'm always shocked about who the Lord is kind of prompting to do this. But I was so thrilled that she asked me, because she came up with a list of questions for me. And I loved hearing her questions. And her questions, I asked her for a copy of this because what she has been wondering is like what everyone wonders and what I get asked over and over and over. So I've shaped these videos to be able to go through these questions at a deeper level to help you work through all these things that you might be wondering yourself. But I loved her very first question that she asked me. I was a little taken back by it. But she asked me, why is everyone homeschooling? What am I missing? And I just had to laugh because not everyone's homeschooling, of course, but there's definitely a shift and a movement, and it's becoming increasingly more popular. And I have a lot of theories. Like, of course, there's more resources than ever for homeschool moms. I look back at the homeschool moms that did this a generation or 2 generations before me, and I think they must have been so brave because they didn't have a lot of resources. They were just going off of their gut. But there's so much available for us now. There's so many options to help our kids who all learn differently. So that could be one of the reasons, but I want to speak to you from like my perspective on why this might be. And I really feel like our modern system of education is failing our kids a little bit or a lot. I don't want to seem too extreme here. But man, we just see so many unhappy kids. We're putting a lot of pressure on them. We're taking away their childhood. And when you've seen the other side of that, you just want to shout it from the rooftops. You want to say, there is a freedom and a joy your kids can experience when they don't have all this pressure, when we're not holding them to these standards that are not always realistic. But I just feel like our public school system is failing us a little bit, or a lot. But on the flip side of that, I feel like this is a really positive change for public school. As more people choose to homeschool, I think it is going to actually hold our public school system, which is necessary for us at this time. But it's going to hold them to a higher standard. You know, whenever there is competition like that, you know, it's kind of like the tide that rises all the boats. So I hope in this little homeschool movement that it wakes up the system a little bit and says, you know what, we're not serving our kids right. These kids are unhappy, or we're just spitting out these kids that are all achieving the same things. Like, something's got to change. So I'm hopeful that that is also going to be a result, and why maybe so many people are being called to homeschool, so that we can make a worldwide lasting change for all the children in the world. I always find it so interesting, like when you get into the Facebook groups and stuff, and I'll teach you how to do that, but there are a lot of teachers that are choosing to leave the system and homeschool their kids because they get firsthand experience with seeing how difficult it is in the schools and how much these kids are struggling. So I'm always interested to hear from a teacher's perspective on why this is happening and becoming so popular. But I really am encouraged by what I'm seeing, and I feel like whether we homeschool or not, we have an opportunity right now to kind of reform the way we educate our kids and hopefully make things better for the world. So that was her first question, is why is everyone homeschooling? And then as she was about to leave, she asked me her last question, which I found equally interesting. And she asked, what is the hardest thing about homeschool? And it took me back, because there have been the hard things like I talked to you about. There have been the challenges that I've had to overcome, but I've overcome them. And most of them are just mindset. Like I think I told her, like, the hardest thing is just still feeling like I'm not doing enough. But whenever I think about that, I look at my kids, they're thriving. They are happy. When I compare them to other kids, I realize they're going to be okay. They're going to get to college or whatever is over 18 for them, and they will be well adjusted. They will know what to do with their time. They will know how to learn. They will know how to succeed. If they want to learn another language, they will. Like, I just know they're going to be okay. And so that's really the only like mindset challenge that I continue to face, is just, oh, I'm not doing enough, but I get the reassurances. So I really couldn't answer her very well on the hardest thing about this, because it's all easy to overcome. Maybe not easy, but possible to overcome. And then when you do, you're almost just set free, and it doesn't become a problem anymore. So it's just an amazing journey, my friends. I want to end with a couple of quotes that I always come back to that really encourage me. So if you're feeling overwhelmed or confused or nervous about the promptings you're getting here, there's a couple quotes I want to share with you. One is from David O. McKay, and it was in the building that I went to college in at BYU, Idaho. It was a big quote, and I saw it every single day for about 4 years. So I have it very memorized. But he said that no success in life can compensate for failure in the home. And I don't know that if I wouldn't have homeschooled that I would have necessarily failed in the home, but I know that I wasn't fully embracing my role as a mother and a homemaker, and taking this leap into being their teacher and being with them all the time. I just feel so much more at peace when I hear that quote. Like, you're right. There is nothing that I could do on my online job, no success that I could reach that would fulfill me more than being with my children, guiding them and directing them. And this homeschool life is such a gift and a reassurance that we're giving our kids absolutely the best of us and everything that we can. And when my kids leave this house, I will have no regrets, and I will know that I tried my best. And I'm grateful for that. And there's this other quote by an educator called Pestalozzi. It's a hard name. I can't remember where he's from, but he lived a long, long time ago, and he studied the education of children. And I love what he said here, and I'm actually going to put it on the back of your packet so you can refer to it if you want to flip to it right now as I read this. But he says, in its purity, this life in the home circle is the highest, most exalted that can be thought or dreamed of for the education of our race. It is unconditionally true. Where love and the ability to love are found in the home circle, there one can confidently predict that the education it affords almost never fails. I love that quote because it gives me such reassurance that even if I don't teach them everything that they should learn before they leave my house, if I have embraced them in this environment of love where I am here for them and I am giving them what I feel like they need, what they want, what they desire to learn in a loving environment, that they will be fine. They will succeed in their education. And I am just, the longer I go at this, the more I can let go of, because I see the fruits of this labor, and they are so good, worth every bit of effort, worth every minute. I cannot say that enough, that it has been the best journey of my life. And I will just end this here. My friend, if you feel like you want to continue this path, I just want to ensure you that you can do this. It is so possible and so wonderful, and I desperately want to help you. I want to share my experience and my wisdom that I've learned and be there for you. So, if you're ready, let us continue our journey in the homeschool exploration.